So Kevin wants to know about the Urantia book. So let's check it out. Good morning, my friends. It's I, John, here in the studio on a early morning. Voice is a little raw this morning, but still drinking my John's Joe coffee. Feels so good. I recently put out a video asking people to go ahead and send in video questions. So put themselves on video, asking a question, and then I would put their video clip in the video. And this is the first. This comes from Kevin out of Florida. And so let's see what Kevin has to say.
Hey, John. This is Kevin Farrell down in Florida. Just had a quick question. If you've ever read the Urantia book, there's 25 hours worth of Jesus' life on there. And I was curious if you read it, what you thought about it, to jog any of your past life memories, and what your discernment told you, if any of it's true or in part or in whole, and just overall what you thought about it. Thank you.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for the question. I have to tell you, the Urantia book is a very interesting book to me, because I made a video a while back called Urantia Book, Religion or Cult, and I got both positive and negative feedback on that. And I find what I found most interesting is the people who take it as the absolute infallible truth got very vehement, just like a Catholic would. It was very interesting. They called me dumb. They told me I don't understand it. They told me that the book, that I obviously never read the book. Well, I have. I've read all of the text of the Urantia material, because people forget that I really was on a journey for a long time trying to find out the truth about things. But people get angry about it with me because I don't believe what they believe. And they tell me I'm an idiot because I don't believe what they believe. Let's talk about the Urantia book, and let's talk about the origins of the Urantia book. It was first published in 1955 by the Urantia Foundation. And the thing that's interesting about that time period, 1955, this is 10 years after the death of Edgar Cayce. This is during the whole time when sleeping prophets, which Cayce was known as, were the big thing within the Theosophical Society. Channeled writings and messages being brought forward were a really big deal, and they're a big deal now too. And a lot of them are, in my opinion, not legitimate either. But I think, as with all things, you can find some truth in all of them. But let's talk about the author of this book. Who wrote the Urantia book? Well, according to the story, somebody's neighbor said her husband had fallen into sleep and is now speaking. And so they supposedly came over and wrote down everything he said. They've never revealed who it actually was. They never, ever have shown any proof that this person ever was in a sleeping state when they said it. For all core elements of it, there's no proof that anyone ever channeled this. There's no proof of that. It claims that it's written by celestial beings, angels, higher spirits, divine entities, and was transmitted to this human in Chicago. The individual is referred to only as the contact person and remains anonymous even to this day. And supposedly it was overseen by Dr. William Sadler. And Dr. William Sadler gathered a study group to analyze the material. Sadler claimed that the information was received through divine revelation of a sleeping subject. It took several years for this study group to compile these messages. And in 1955, the book was finally put together as a book, and a nonprofit organization was established to distribute and preserve it. The Urantia book, it consists of 196 papers divided into 4 parts, each focusing on different aspects of cosmology, theology, philosophy, and history, which were very much what the Theosophical Society was trying to do, was trying to combine science and religion into one idea. They kind of lose me on several things, but the first one that really kind of gets me is they believe God is the universal Father, a personal, infinite, eternal, loving deity who creates and sustains the universe. But if you think about just this terminology itself, it's a patriarchal male God who's external, who's loving, that's beautiful, and sustains the universe. So they've leaned into this patriarchal male God, which is very much from the time period of the 1940s and 30s, and really speaks a lot in the way that Edgar Cayce does about God being a male patriarchal God, which is strictly from the ideologies of religion. So it starts off with the foundation of religion. God is portrayed as someone who's approachable and loving, and it emphasizes a close personal relationship with God and individuals. But the idea of approachable is interesting because it means that God is external. There is no oneness with God within this ideology. Later on, they'll contradict themselves. They'll say that there is a oneness, but it's not with God, because God is separate, male, patriarchal God. The second part is about cosmology. The book, it outlines complex and hierarchical cosmology detailing multiple levels of existence. For me personally, there's no way that this works with me, because by first regression, I literally said it's so simple we have a hard time comprehending it. So for me personally, this is a red flag for me, that the idea that it's complex and hierarchical. I don't believe there's hierarchy, and I don't believe in complexity. So to me, this is very much off the mark in my mind. The universal structure. The center universe, which is known as Havona, surrounds the Isle of Paradise and the eternal dwelling of God. So in other words, this external God lives in this heaven space called Havona, which is why it's called Havona, because it sounds like heaven. And it surrounds the Isle of Paradise. So now we're looking at this concept of real complexity, external God living in a place that's like paradise, and that's where he eternally dwells. The next is there's 7 super universes, which include vast regions of space-time, each overseen by spiritual administrators. Now I've got a hierarchy of spiritual administrators in various aspects and dwellings of universes out there. And the idea of all of this being, all this complexity being part of our hierarchical system that we live in. And Urantia, which means earth, is part of a system within the local universe of Nebadon, governed by a being named Michael of Nebadon. Now, here's where it gets really tricky. Michael of Nebadon is Jesus Christ in their teachings. So Jesus Christ is named Michael of Nebadon, and he is in charge of Earth. And as far as Earth is concerned, the book presents a completely alternative history of Earth. It talks about how the arrival of life on Earth, the role of Adam and Eve as divine administrators sent to uplift humanity. Now, first of all, this idea of Adam and Eve, obviously coming from religious backgrounds, the concept of Adam and Eve being divine administrators talks once again about that hierarchical system, which comes from religion, and uplift humanity because humanity needs to be uplifted, which is very interesting. It also talks about the rebellion of Lucifer, a celestial being who caused significant spiritual disruption in the local universe. Fallen angel Lucifer. Now we're deeper into religion, and they're tying it into the celestial being who created a disruption in the local universe, right? So you can see how this teaching automatically falls away from everything I believe. My experiences are very clear on the simplicity of the universe, and the idea of a Lucifer being, it was a story to talk about, following rules. He fell from grace because he was going against the patriarchal God in the book. So the idea of the rebellion of Lucifer, a celestial being who caused significant spiritual disruption in the local universe. That, to me, in itself, it means that somebody was reading their Bible pretty heavily when they created this idea of him being this celestial being who caused this problem. Now, as I said, Jesus was not Jesus, he was Michael. And is central to the Urantia teachings, but it presented as Michael of Nebadon, a creator son of God, a creator son of God. His life was an emphasis on human and divine nature. The book offers an expanded narrative of his teachings, including events not recorded in the traditional Christian scriptures. Now, you'll notice it says not recorded in traditional Christian scriptures. So they've taken the framework of Christianity and they've started putting in new stories. Well, this is exactly what happened later on with the Greco-Roman Christians as they started adding stories to fit their narrative in the Bible. Now let's talk about the purpose of life. The Urantia book says the purpose of life is seen as a spiritual journey towards divine perfection and unity with God. I agree with some of this, not all of it, but I believe that spirituality is a personal journey. I believe that each one of us is on our own personal journey, and I believe we're here to come back to our oneness with God, our unity with God. This concept of divine perfection, to me, perfection is always subjective, and divine perfection would be pure love, and our journey is to go back to pure love. I think our journey is more about bringing love here, but and in so doing, realize our divinity. Now, the next part of this, it kind of lays true with Hinduism, which is a very interesting thing because the Theosophical Society was trying to tie Hinduism into Christianity. Individuals are indwelt by a fragment of God called the thought adjuster, which guides them towards higher spiritual understanding. First of all, once again, this is that hierarchy idea, but there's the concept of this fragment of God, this spark of divinity within ourselves. This is very much a Hindu idea, but the thought adjuster is very much a modern New Age theology sort of idea, and that guides them towards higher spiritual understanding. I believe in the oneness of God, and when I believe in the oneness of God, I believe that our higher selves or our higher spiritual understanding is our higher self, our Holy Spirit. It is our oneness with God. It is our self without our fears and anxieties. So when I look at this, is that they're saying that there's this inner being, a fragment of God inside of us that's separate from us, called a thought adjuster. And so that to me would absolutely negate anything I would believe about this, because this idea of separateness within the non-dualities that I believe really just wouldn't do it. The idea that there's a title called thought adjuster is obviously of the mind of man creating something within ourselves that wouldn't be called the Holy Spirit, but it's basically the same idea. The ultimate goal of the Urantia book is for us to ascend through various levels of existence, eventually reaching paradise and achieving eternal unity with God. This falls directly away from everything Jeshua taught. Jeshua taught our oneness with God in the here and now, and our awareness is only to get rid of the other ideas, to calm the storm in our brain and our mind, and come back to our oneness with God in the here and now. This entire thing talks about a linear time where we're trying to reach this paradise and achieving eternal unity with God. You're never not in unity with God. It's just your awareness of that unity that is being taken away from you by this text. It's literally telling you that you are not one with God and that you're trying to achieve something. And in that regard, it doesn't talk about the idea that you only live in this one moment, this only one moment that you ever live, which means if you're one with God, then God has to be in this moment as well. And so the Urantia book absolutely is based in the theosophical ideas and adding its own narrative, probably by this study group by Mr. Stadler. And they probably created this whole idea around this to create this new teaching. They're not revealing who the person is, so the only authority we have in this is Stadler and his study group, and so far they haven't shown anything other than basic theosophical teachings. The book emphasizes oneness of humanity and the idea that all people are children of the same divine Father. Absolutely true. We're all one. We're all humans. We're all one with God. And then it says the same divine Father. It goes back to their patriarchal beliefs of that Theosophical Society teaching, and it completely tears apart the idea of your divinity because we're trying to get back to do the divine. Your divinity is here and now. And in my opinion, this is, once again, more theosophical teaching being brought forward. Now, the book does encourage universal love and service to others and it encourages universal love, service to others, the development of a spiritual civilization based upon truth, beauty, and goodness. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? As I've said in many times, you can find truth everywhere. We want to have universal love. We want to serve each other. We want to have a civilization that's based on spiritual truth, beauty, and goodness. This is absolutely something you'll find in every religion, every spiritual texts, you'll find this is one of those universal things that's in all of them. There are several universal truths, and this mentions, basically the main one where we're all connected with through love, and we want to have a good world. For pretty basic statement. The Urantia book integrates science and spirituality, presenting a vision of a universe that aligns with both modern physics and spiritual truths. This was one of the core principles and guiding mantras of the Theosophical Society. They were marrying spirituality and science. So this group is absolutely tying into the theosophical teachings of the time. It's not this divine message that came through independent of the Theosophical Society. It's actually bringing through Theosophical Society teachings. It challenges traditional materialistic views and offers a theology of an informed understanding of evolution, cosmology, and consciousness. Offers a theology of informed understanding of evolution, cosmology, and consciousness. You've heard me on many videos talk about religion as trying to control God by creating stories and narratives around God so that their ideas would work. Informed understanding of evolution, cosmology, and consciousness. Who's informing you? Stadler's group. Stadler's group is informing you of this thing with science and cosmology and all the stuff coming together, and this is how evolution works. And when you dive into those ideas, they all fall down. They don't fit with modern science now. Since then, we've got carbon dating, we've got all kinds of other things science-wise, and the Urantia book does not fall into form with actual science, but they're claiming that it does. This book has inspired a global network of study groups and people who found its teachings profound. It claims not to be aligned with any organized religion, although it appears to people across spiritual traditions. It talks about the Father, patriarchal God. It talks about Jesus and Lucifer and all of these aspects of Adam and Eve. It's tied into Christian religion 100%. 100% tied into Christian religion, and it peppers in Hinduism here and there, which is what the Theosophical Society did. People will often question the legitimacy of its origins, mainly because it's also very speculative. It doesn't really lay out the world. It doesn't really lay out anything except for new ideas that are very contrary to everything Joshua taught. But it's followers that gets divinely inspired revelation, and they are welcome to their belief. I guarantee you, when this video comes out, I'm going to get messages from Urantia book followers who are going to tell me I'm an idiot, who are going to tell me that I don't know anything, that I've never read it. I have read it. I've read it all the way through, and this text that I'm referring to in front of me is my own notes about it. I have been through it many times, and if you believe it's divinely inspired revelation, great. The only thing I ask you is, are you loving in the present moment? If you are, great. You found your way to God. I think God is too big and too beautiful to be encompassed by any one school of thought or religion, and this has very quickly become a religion. People are saying that it is divine truth, and I don't believe it is. I believe it's just one more element that was coming out of that time period of the Theosophical Society. It's interesting to me when I look at this text and I see this text as very blatantly more of the Theosophical teachings with added elements. It's also interesting that this book was printed 10 years after the death of Edgar Cayce, when Edgar Cayce had made a big splash as being the sleeping prophet at the time. 10 years later, another sleeping prophet has come out with this idea and these texts, but they won't reveal who it is. But Stadler and his study group are the only ones who can decipher what it is. When I look at this idea, this whole setup, the foundation is murky. The teachings do not match anything Jeshua ever taught. In fact, it goes completely away from what Jeshua taught. The idea of a patriarchal male God is not what he taught. He taught about oneness and non-duality, and this idea of spiritual hierarchy and this entity which dwells within you, that's part of God, that's not really you, but it's part of you. It all falls flat to me. The idea of the Urantia book being something that is an infallible truth, it falls apart very quickly when you put it against science, which is what it's trying to do, marry science with spirituality. It also falls apart really quickly when it goes against just the basic teachings of Jeshua in the New Testament. It falls completely away from that. When you dive into everything else around that story, if you just look at the narrative of the New Testament, which it's trying to marry itself to, and then you look at everything around that they've added around it, you see this complexity of spiritual multiple universes and God and levels of the universes and the spiritual hierarchy and all this complexity. It makes no sense to me. So to me personally, the Urantia book is just more stuff that was coming out of the 40s and 50s Theosophical movement. And I think it actually does more harm than good because it actually takes us away from a simple message and makes it more and more complex. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate speech from Urantia followers on this, but it's okay. I have read the text. I have studied it. I just don't believe it. And I know that offends some. And let me say this. The last time I put up a video about the Urantia book, I had people come on here, first of all, calling me terrible things, saying that I don't know what to talk about, and then trying to proselytize the Urantia book. If you want to come on and talk and say it's your beliefs and this is what you believe, that's great. But if you come on to try to sway people to it, you will be blocked from my channel or any religion. I don't let people come on and talk about Christianity and try to save people. I block them immediately. And I've never had any other religion try to come at me. But I will say something really interesting. The Urantia book followers have reacted. Many of them have reacted like those Christians trying to save the people from hell. And to me, that means it really has fallen into the idea of a religion. And I think that's antithetical to everything Joshua taught. So I hope that answers your question, Kevin. I'm glad. Thank you for the answer. If anybody else wants to have a question answered directly and want to be on one of the videos, just record yourself on your phone like Kevin did or on your computer and just email that to contact@johnofnew.com and maybe you'll get on one of the videos. And that's my thought on this. You guys have a great day and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.